the screen a little bit better too.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Last week I could only see vision or something.
I'm going to let all of the attendees in the waiting room into the meeting. It's 7:01.
Last time I did this, I logged.
It's just going to take us about a minute here to get everyone into the meeting. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 23rd, 2022 council meeting for the Village of Lytton. I'm just going to take a moment to remind everyone to mute their microphone and turn off their video so we can allow council members to begin the proceedings. And just letting you know, we're all being recorded and broadcast on the Village of Lytton's YouTube channel. And if you are looking to see a video recording of this meeting, you can go to the YouTube channel and watch it immediately after the meeting. I will then now hand over the duties to our Mayor O'Connor, who can begin and call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Nikki. I call this meeting to order at 7:02. I want to recognize that I am here on the Tk'emlúps territory, and we are speaking, of course, about the Village of Lytton, which is on the Ntlaka'pamux territory. So I think that's important to recognize that. So what I'd like to do, we'll get started right away here, is adoption of the agenda. So do we have any late items? I don't believe so. Okay. So a call for a motion to adopt tonight's agenda, please, Council.
I'll make a motion. Oh.
And I'll second it if needed.
Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot and McCann. All those in favor? And carried. And I can see you all on the screen tonight. Last week I couldn't, so that's a good thing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're going to go right into the delegation presentation. So we do have one tonight. Sophie from ICLR, Kelsey Winter from FireSmart, Alan from ForestWise Environmental Consulting, and they're going to be speaking regarding the FireSmart bylaw 711. So welcome all of you, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. Sorry about my voice. Good evening, everyone, and yeah, thank you for having us tonight and including us on the agenda. It's a pleasure to see all of you in person, meet the new council. We just wanted to take a few minutes today to reintroduce ourselves, briefly go over the wildfire risk reduction measures that are part of Bylaw 711 as it stands, and how these measures can hopefully benefit your community. But we also really want to hear from you. As we know, your community is unique. There's been a lot of questions and concerns in the past about some components of the bylaw. So we have representatives today from 3 different organizations, which is us, the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, FireSmart DC, and ForestWise Environmental Consulting. And we're here as resources to your community to ensure that you have your questions answered, hopefully tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share a brief presentation with you. Everyone can see okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, so just a bit of a reminder. So we are the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. We are a multidisciplinary non-for-profit disaster risk reduction research institute, and we're part of Western University. We focus on wildfire, climate, and seismic damage reduction science. We're funded both by government agencies and 120 property and casualty insurance companies, and we've been around for 25 years this year. So far, our role in Lytton has been to provide recommendation on what are some of the best practices to rebuild a community that is resilient to wildfire. And our overall mission, since we've been founded, is to reduce the risk of loss of life and property caused by severe weather and earthquake through the identification of and support of sustained actions to adapt and recover from natural disasters. Kelsey can't join us tonight, but we have Helena from FireSmart. Helena, are you around to just briefly say a word about FireSmart BC? Okay, I'm not sure if maybe she hasn't been admitted in the room, Helena Markins. So maybe I'll go ahead. So FireSmart, you've met them many times before. It is your go-to source for preparing for wildfire season. They have tips for homeowners, communities on and several programs to help the communities prepare and be ready for wildfire season. It's governed by the BC FireSmart Committee, a group that's composed of various government agencies. And their goal is to collaboratively that's complicated words, collaboratively maintain and improve the delivery of a FireSmart program to better support wildfire preparedness, prevention, and mitigation in BC. So I think I saw Alan. Alan, do you want to go ahead and briefly introduce yourself as well?
Yes, thank you, Sophia. It looks like hopefully you can hear me. I'm not on video though, but thanks for the opportunity to attend the meeting tonight. My career was with national parks, mostly as a wildland fire manager and a wildfire behavior analyst, but my real passion has been working with fire officials, residents, and communities across Canada to find solutions that reduce the risk of wildfire losses. And as a director of FireSmart for more than 20 years, I was heavily involved in developing and promoting its core programs. In retirement, I've done multiple studies and research to learn more about how homes ignite and how fire spreads through communities, including the recent study on at Lytton and in conjunction with Jack Cohen of the U.S. Forest Service. I recognize a bylaw is one important aspect of a multifaceted FireSmart approach. However, I've had no involvement in developing the draft bylaw that you're working with or its parent document guide published by the National Research Council of Canada. But I've been asked by ICLR to listen to your concerns tonight. And if it's decided that it would be helpful to offer some additional insights, which may be included in the bylaw at some point. So that's it for me. Thank you. I'm listening to your concerns.
Thank you, Alan. So Alan briefly touched on it, but the bylaw didn't come out of obviously our imagination. So it was based on the latest guide that was published. This guide was developed by a community of experts, which includes foresters, a lot of people that have worked in the wildland urban interface with communities like yours to really help communities develop guidelines on what is the best way to build in this type of environment to reduce the risk of wildfire loss. So I know bylaw 711 encompasses a lot of things. The part we were involved with was part 21, 22, and 23. So just want to go over part 21, which is really the building portion of the bylaw. So this portion is there because the way buildings are built and communities are developed, it does play a significant role in reducing the potential impact of a wildfire that it will have on a community. And for example, the potential for damage, it does intensify significantly when flammable building materials are used. So for example, things like vinyl siding, they can increase the risk that your house will burn down. And so the recommendations that are presented in the NRC We Fire Guide are there to reduce the risk of structure ignition to your home and consequently to your neighborhood, because we know how fire spread. And so it's not only to protect yourself, but also to protect your neighbors. So the components that are in there are around exterior walls that would have, I see Helena is here. So exterior walls that would have, for example, no vinyl, but things like masonry or hardy board, roofing materials that include, for example, Class A shingles, gutters and downspouts that are non-combustible, specific doors and windows that are that provide a better risk reduction for wildfire and things like that. Oops, sorry. Okay, through here. The other part of the bylaw is part 22, Appendix N. So in addition to the construction measures that are stated in Appendix M, this includes fuel management. So fuel should be managed in zones within a certain radius of the structure to reduce ignition potential to structures. So, sorry, as it stands, again, in the current bylaw that you have, the initial zone right next to the building, so that's 0.1 to 1.5 meter. It's a non-combustible, so that includes no vegetation and non-combustible material. Zone 1, however, which is the 1.5 to 10 meters of structures, includes controlled vegetation. So that means mowing the grass, pruning your trees. That means choosing species that won't increase your risk. So that could imply certain types of fruit trees, that could involve vegetable gardens, that could involve specific types of shrubs. And I've put some pictures around here. I think you may have seen this before, but these are just a couple examples. The FireSmart website has a list. It's included on the flyer here, but I would be happy to reshare it, and Helena can maybe speak more to it. But it includes quite a few plants that are really good fits for areas like Lytton. And I mentioned before, but things like vegetable gardens would also be completely acceptable. These are not things that include fire risk. And finally, the part Appendix O, part 23, it really refers to the maintenance of fuel on your property. So this just ensures that actions are sustained over time. So that, and I know I heard from many people that you have people in your community take really good care of their lawns, take really good care of their plants. So this is there to ensure that it stays like this. I know Alan, even when he went to your community, mentioned that he was very impressed with how, lots were maintained. So this is just in there to ensure this continues, and that, things like, dead trees are removed, dead branches, lots are cleaned up, and things like that over time. So this is just a very brief overview. We want to give you a few minutes if you have questions, concerns. I know it's been a while since we last spoke. So Helena, Alan, and I, we're here to answer any questions that council may have. And we're also obviously happy to come back in a different format if that can be helpful, maybe more of a working session or anything like that in the future. But just want to give you an opportunity to speak up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Council, do you have any comments or questions? Is there any?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple questions. You mentioned that ICLR was funded by government agencies as well as 120 plus insurance companies. What government agencies are involved? It's my number one question. I'll start with that.
Yeah, for sure. So we receive a lot of grants from different government agencies. So that would include public safety, for example. We've worked with EMBC in the past. So we've worked with many provincial groups as well. We worked with NRC on specific projects as well to help improve building codes in Canada. I would say those are the main ones, but it varies from time to time, obviously, depending on the specific type of research projects that we get involved with over time.
Councilor
another
McCann?
question.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Toss.
No, it's
That's okay. I can come back. Go ahead,
Councilor
Councilor
McCann?
McCann.
No, I think I'm okay. Thanks. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was interested, I think, Ms. Guibault, you mentioned that you were doing some research, months ago in a public meeting around modular homes that might be consistent with FireSmart regulations. And I'm wondering if there was any progress made on that.
At the time, we identified 2 modular homes companies. I would need to open them back up again to let you know the specific names. Here it is. I think there was Nexus, in my opinion, and The other one, I would just need to confirm in my emails the other name. It's been a few months since I spoke with them, so I'm really happy to email this to Mike and share it with you. We've also spoke with window and doors providers, and we're setting up meetings for NRC, who really led the guide, the wildfire guide, who's at the base of the bylaw, to really
NRC is
speak with some.
right?
Sorry, what?
Who is NRC? NRC is what?
Sorry, the National Research Council of Canada.
Great.
So these are the people that wrote the guide, which the wildfire risk reduction section was based on. So we will organize a meeting so that modular home providers, but also windows and doors providers. I know Mike mentioned there's a specific company that received some contracts for homes in Lytton. So all these people are at the same table to discuss what is it that is required, for example, on a specific exterior wall in Lytton, what types of windows work, because as you could see in the bylaw, there's a lot of references to a specific test that were completed in the past to ensure wildfire risk, the performance in a fire setting. So I want to make sure that everyone has the same information, and we will include these two modular home companies, but also the 5, 6, 7 others that we reached out to ensure that everyone has clarity on what that means, and that everyone works with the same information. And if there's any questions and concerns, we'll work together to address them as well.
Thank you. And I think you meant Nexi Homes, is that right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Nexi. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lightfoot, yes.
So the two main concerns I hear are propane tanks and RV parking. And I think you mentioned in a previous meeting, Sophie, that if it was on a cement pad, it might be able to be accommodated. Am I correct in my recollection, or can you expand on those two issues?
So maybe I'll start with answering a portion of it. So I know a portion of the question was about, barbecues. So we don't really have concerns around barbecues, if that's part of the question. The other part of the question, maybe I'll let Alan speak a little bit as to his thoughts on propane tanks and what the type of risk and how that could potentially be mitigated. I don't know, Alan, if you're around to speak of this.
I'm no authority on propane tanks, but there are many built-in safety measures in propane tanks, but it's essential that they be protected from high-intensity, long-lasting sources of heat, which generally, if you're following Fire Smart guidelines, that's doable. And it's important that larger tanks be 10 meters away from homes, because a burning home is, of course, a very big source of heat. But there are maybe means of exploring shielding tanks, if it's somewhat less than 10 meters, to shield the tank from, say, a home with some kind of a barrier, and prevent the exposure from radiant heat.
I think given the size of our lots, that 10 meters is maybe not possible in most cases.
Well, I think what needs to be explored is, how much could that distance be shortened if there is some effective type of shielding from buildings, and so that some compromise could be reached with the distance that doesn't compromise the safety of structures.
Great.
And, I know, just to build on what Alan was saying, that there was the option of a propane grid that was suggested a long time ago. So I'm not sure if there's been more discussions about that, but if houses were connected to an underground propane grid, that would, obviously reduce that risk significantly. I know that was discussed a few months ago, though, so I'm not sure. Maybe this is a question for Mike or for someone else where that is at, or if you're still exploring this. But otherwise, I would be happy to take this back to the committee, to the committee that wrote the guide, and see what could be done to reduce that risk if the distance could not be respected, because we do understand that secondary power is needed in the community. So we'll be happy to explore that further.
just given the size of the community, I'm not convinced a grid is viable. But as far as secondary heating sources, I do believe that you've clarified that wood could be stored if it was in a proper fire resistant shed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, just like you could have likely components inside your house that are, that could ignite. But if the wood was properly stored and protected in a similar structure, I don't see why that would be a problem, unless maybe Helena or Alan, you have other thoughts to add to this.
Okay, and the final question, if you don't mind, the RV question. So
Yeah.
say at the back of your lot, which is adjacent to an alley, you have a cement pad and you park your RV there as far from your house as you could. Is that something that could be viewed as reasonable and mitigating fire risk?
I'll let our fire behavior expert speak to that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lightfoot, that could be tricky because it's not just the fact that it's on a concrete pad. There are many, a motor home or an RV of any type really is very similar to a structure. There are many vulnerabilities of that structure aside from, fire underneath. Even if it were on a concrete pad, if combustible materials accumulated or were stored beneath that RV, that would make it incredibly vulnerable to fire. And the same thing, RVs are generally not built to the same standards as structures are, or that fire resistant, for example, windows. So even if they're on the edge of their property, they may be exposed to significant heat. We were able to see many examples of RVs that were parked even in grasslands or automobiles where they were only exposed to burning grass and maybe embers, and yet they ignited. So the risk really is that if an RV were to burn, that is a very large source of high intensity heat, and it is close to your home. So that is one of the mechanisms that fire spreads from one structure to another. In an RV might be similar to an unprotected garage or a workshop or a tool shed, and just helping that progression of fire spread. So I would think that offsite storage, if you don't have a big lot, that having a secure, safe storage site for RVs and other large objects would be the best solution.
I guess it's just hard for people to accept, given that our view of the remnants of the fire had several RVs intact while the buildings around them were burnt to a crisp. So I understand what you're saying, and I just wanted to bring it forward because I know there are people that are concerned. Thank you.
I'd like
May
to.
On
Sorry.
what Jesua had said, as far as the Alan, what you had just said was it provided your lot wasn't big enough. So are you suggesting that if you had a exceptionally large lot, that RV storage might be okay within the village?
I would think so, that if you can make the clearances, that could be considered. But at the same point, we have to accept the risks that they have vulnerabilities themselves, and are much easier to ignite.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm wondering about vehicles. There's no mention of that. It's just RVs. Vehicles parked in yards. Is there anything in the bylaw that would?
Are you talking about? Are you talking about your own car that you would drive to leave your property, or are you talking about an old car that is no longer?
No, your own vehicles.
Well, I think maybe I can speak first, but I think a car technically, sorry, a car in a wildfire you would need to use to evacuate, right? So I think it's important that you keep that on your lot. Anything that can be driven away very quickly like this, I wouldn't think is a concern. Maybe Alan, you can add to this, but I think, you know, if you considered that we want to protect lives first and then buildings as well, we want you to be able to evacuate if there's any difficult conditions. So we would like you to have access to your car and be able to get out of a critical situation if needed.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions?
One more on the 10-meter requirement for propane tanks to be from the home. Is that, what is standard in, say, Whistler, West Bank, Spence's Bridge? What is the building standard BC wide for the distance from propane tanks? My understanding is it was 10 feet.
Alan, can you
Within
speak to this? You've worked with many of those communities as well.
I cannot quote you. The Fire Smart guidelines have always stated 10 meters, I believe. But I do know that it would be consistent across British Columbia, across the province, because I think this is something that's regulated on a provincial scale.
Absolutely. And therefore, why are we regulating it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are
Thank
there any other questions?
I did have a couple.
Councillor McCann?
Thank you. Some of the things that you've just been speaking about, the propane thing, for example, when I went through the bylaw, the most recent adopted bylaw, I didn't find any references in there to propane tanks at all. So maybe I missed something, but I looked and looked and I couldn't find anything. And I believe that, as Alan has said, to me, propane tanks are regulated already. And I don't understand why the Village of Lytton would want to get involved in regulating propane anyway. Like, why do we need to do that? But the other thing is parts of this bylaw that are in a building bylaw seem to me that perhaps they may be more appropriate, particularly when you're talking about the size of the lot and where an RV could be or could not be parked. That to me is zoning, and that's not building. That has nothing to do with your building. It has to do with your lot and how things are zoned and what's allowed and not allowed. And those are things that are unique to your property and that you could possibly ask for a variance on to make it fit your property and make your property and your home and your building possible instead of impossible. So those are my feelings about some of the things that we've been discussing and how they're embedded in this bylaw for building, where perhaps that's not the most appropriate place for them to be. That's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. So I think in terms of the propane tanks, that would be part of the references on structure ignition zones and what can and cannot be in specific zones on your property. So that should be there. It may be in the form of a reference to the guide, as well as were some of the references in the part 21 on buildings. So that may be there. In terms of enforcement mechanisms, I think initially, we made a whole submission based on the guide. The way this is enforced or the way this is implemented, whether it's in a zoning bylaw, a development permit, any of those things, I think that's up to your community to decide how you want to do that. And maybe Ron Dickinson can speak more to this. I know him and I have had some conversations about this, but you are correct, right? There are things that belong more in the building bylaw, more in the development permit, and things like that. So how you decide to enforce this is up to your community and to work with your staff and your team. What we shared with you are the recommendations on the guide, and obviously these include some aspects on the building and some aspects on the zoning and some aspects on the maintenance, and these need to maybe be approached differently. So maybe Ron, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this.
Sure, Your Worship. That set of regulations could exist in multiple different platforms of bylaws. Like as was discussed, zoning, development permit areas, and the building bylaw. But there's advantages and disadvantages to each of them, and it would be quite. It's not very complex. We could just lay out what are the advantages, disadvantages, and have just an effective implementation program in any one of those bylaws. Some will have more flexibility than others.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you. Any other, Councillor Michelle, do you have any questions or comments?
No, they've been covered.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and for answering our questions.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, I do notice some of the public with their hands up, but this, of course, these question answers are just for council. Just to clarify that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to public comments. So, Nikki, would you like to read this part out?
Yes, thank you. Just as Mayor Connor had just stated, there is a period of time in the meeting for the public. So the members of the public right now are invited to comment on matters related to this agenda for up to 2 minutes per speaker. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. You can find that by clicking on the reactions at the bottom of your screen and then by clicking raise hand. When it's your turn, I'll read your name and we will ask that you unmute yourself. You'll get a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak, and we'll request that you state your name, your address, and then the item on the agenda that you wish to speak to. So if you would like to speak to council or ask submit a comment, I do see we have someone here, but they're not showing their name. So I'm just going to get this person to unmute, and then they can speak their name and the item number and their address. And it says AJ Wag, so you can speak.
That's Ernie.
Ah,
Yeah, this is Ernie Wagner from Agassiz, and I've lived in Lytton for many years. I have family and friends there. I've really studied a lot on this bylaw, and I see that you use the National Guide for Wildland Urban Interface Fires. Is that correct? On page 33, this has not been approved in Canada, first of all. On page 86, they recommend that propane tanks be no more than 2 meters from the house. So this is an international guide. It's not meant for Canada. There's lots of controversies there where they say green lawn is nil for problems. And yet further on, they say that for 1.5 meters, you should bring it right down to gravel. The other thing is, that's 197 pages, by the way. I've read through them all. The other thing is that that you had British Columbia examination of Lytton, British Columbia wildland fire. And the reason they said the fire went through Lytton was dry grass, debris, and wooden structures. There's no mention of RVs, firewood, propane tanks, lawn furniture, all the things that are in this bylaw. And their recommendations after is to have your lawn right up to your house, your firewood at a reasonable distance, which is probably about 5 meters. There's nothing about propane tanks. The provincial recommendations right across Canada, in fact, is 3 meters. So I think this has gone way too far. The problem was dry grass and debris and wooden houses that were not fire safe. Once that's done, I think this is overkill. So I think it should lay off a little bit. Why can't, if you can have a vehicle beside your house, why can't you have your RV beside your house? Doesn't make sense, does it? Firewood, you ever tried to
Mr.
light a
Wagner,
campfire
just,
with all the firewood
sorry,
piled on top of each other?
Mr. Wagner, sorry to interrupt. You've reached your 2 minutes. Would you like to resubmit yourself to the speaker list, or shall we see if there's other members of the public?
I think I'm probably pretty well done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wagner, you're more than welcome to submit written correspondence to council. So members of the public who can't attend meetings can also read your comments and concerns. And there's a lot of mention there about specific numbers and pages. So it would be good for council to have that information. If you would be so kind to send that forward to council, and you can send that to Ledge Services, so LEG Services at lytton.ca, and then we can place that on the next council agenda for council to consider. Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just going to return back to the public speaker list here. If you are a member of the public and you'd like to submit a comment to council regarding an agenda item, please use the raise hand function. And I'm just going to call a second time here. I'm not seeing any hands up. And I'm just going to call a third time. And we have no more comments. And I thank you, Mr. Wagner, for coming forward.
Thank you. So we'll move on to adoption of the minutes for our last council meeting, which was November the 9th. Can I call for a council member to move?
So moved, Councillor Toss.
Okay, and a seconder?
I'll second, but I have a couple of things in the minutes.
Okay, and discussion. So now your time for your comments, Ms. Councillor McCann.
I hate this, but my name is misspelled, so I wouldn't mind if it was spelled correctly. Okay. And the other thing I noticed was that there was no summary of the last meeting's 2-minute comments. And I find it really helpful when the person's name and a brief statement of what they talked about is included in the minutes. Because I know sometimes we have had that and other times it doesn't seem like it's there. So if it is possible to continue to do that, that would certainly be my preference if we're allowed to do that. And on item 10-1 refers to a Remembrance Day event at KSS on the 11th, but it actually should say the 10th because there was no school on the 11th. That's just a little bits and pieces I noticed. So there you go.
Through the mayor, if I may, just to thank you, Councillor McCann, so much for that correction. I did want to note to the public and council that for some reason, our previous council meeting, right before we had the cutoff of the council chambers, that recording was lost. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to go back through those minutes and record the speakers at the last meeting. So I can confirm that moving forward, we'll get those speakers and Mr. Wagner will be on the minutes for this meeting. And then of course I can amend all those things in the minutes. So if councilors want to move forward with this amendment, adopting the minutes, you can say as amended, and I've noted the amendment changes here, so we don't have to talk about specifics. Unless there's more, we can add more as well.
Okay, are there any other discussion or questions about the agenda or about the minutes? No, okay. Hearing none. All those in favor to adopt the November 9th council meeting minutes as amended.
Well done.
Thank you. Carried. Okay, we're going to move on to business arising from the minutes, and there is nothing. So on to staff reports. So we'll hear from Chief Administrative Officer Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to begin today with a verbal update on on the recovery, the director of recovery position. So sewer, water, and tapping, 10 more of the properties have now been completed for a total of 140 of the properties. Contaminated soil has been removed from 45 more properties during the month of October for a total of 100 properties now. They've also been working on the vegetation management in the village and the danger tree removal in the village. As of October 31st, 95% of the notice of independent remediation, the NIRs, have been submitted, and an additional 20 properties can now be remediated. A total of 5 properties currently have archaeological issues or awaiting the final notice of independent remediation completion. A decision to shovel test the remediated properties to delineate the extent of future registered archaeology sites will be decided in the upcoming weeks during discussions with the Kumsheen Heritage Committee, the province, and the village council. The intent of the delineation is to reduce the area of impact that the newly registered archaeological sites will have on private properties. So we'll have a lot more information about this coming forward to council in the very near future, including impacts to the completion date, as well as additional costs to the scope of the work. As of October 31st, the following quantity of debris has been removed. So this has been updated as per council's previous request. So debris, metal and concrete, the tonnages that have been removed to date are 7,050 metric tons of concrete and 520 metric tons of metal. The number of properties that this has been removed from is 130. And the estimated tonnage remaining is 300 metric tons of concrete and 40 metric tons of metal. So from those percentage-wise, we've got 7,000, a little over 7,000 completed of the concrete, 300 metric tons remaining. Of the metal, we've got 520 metric tons complete, 40 metric tons remaining. The asbestos contaminated material, the tonnage removed is 9,050 metric tons. The number of properties that this has been removed from is 140. And the estimated properties remaining to be addressed are 2. Soil remediation at all levels, the tonnage removed is 11,500 metric tons. And the number of properties is 100 properties complete with 28 remaining. Quick status update of the IBI group. So the IBI group was concurrently completing the following activities in the village of Lytton during October. So they were issuing the notices of independent remediation. They were monitoring the remedial contractor, so MatCon, the works that they were completing, the collection of samples of anthropognetic materials that have undergone combustion. So they're taking debris samples from the areas to get laboratory analysis done on those. And the collection of soil samples for laboratory analysis. AEW has been continuing with the archaeological work. The AEW crew size averaged 14.4 people per day during the month of October, so that was very consistent with September. The number of properties currently being monitored are 144 properties out of 151 in total. The number of potential archaeological sites that have been uncovered is 85. And the number of sites with potential archaeological sites is 92. I think the final update that I have from the recovery director would be that the Village of Lytton has received back now from the documents that were destroyed. The village had sent away to see what could be reclaimed, what could be fixed, and we received back that information this week. So we've got 20 boxes of material to go through at the Boston Bar office. I believe a report will be coming, most likely to the next council meeting, with some ideas of the resources required to actually deal with those 20 boxes of material. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am glad this is being recorded so I can listen to it again and get all that information. So we're going to move on to the official community plan. We have a recommendation here for a motion, and I wonder if I can have a council member that would like to make the motion to get the conversation
Maybe
started.
we should have it spoken to first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So CAO Baker will present a report on it.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm actually going to defer to Mr. Matt Lane on this one as the author of the report. If you could just take us through this, please.
Thank you, CAO Baker. So on request from council, we've flushed out the report here for the recommendation of award of a contract for the OCP, Official Community Plan Consultant, to the IBI Group Professional Services at the value of $286,325 plus applicable taxes, and also recommending that Mayor and Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to execute the documents for the award of the Official Community Plan contract once funding is approved. In June and August, we had completed an RFP process in order to acquire proponents that would be interested in providing the services for the OCP for the Village of Lytton. In that, we had identified that the final deliverables were to be an engagement plan and summary of public outreach in order to incorporate the community in this process, a summary of existing land uses, configuration, data analysis, an updated community vision and goals statement, documented policy recommendations and land use plan strategies, an action plan for the OCP and its components, a draft OCP bylaw, technical summary demonstrating how the OCP bylaw and document process satisfies legislative requirements, and after adoption of final OCP bylaw ready for reproduction digitally. In the updated document that we do have here, we've gone in and provide a little more information on the full breakdown for scoring for the various proponents that did provide pricing and proposals for the official community plan proposals, as well as a brief summary of each one and how they met or did not meet requirements for the RFP. I believe I'll leave it open for questions at that.
Okay, thank you. So now I'll call for a council member to make the recommended motion so that we can get the conversation started.
Okay, I will. Sure. I will so move.
Thank you.
I'll
Should I
second that.
Okay, so the recommendation is that council approve the award of a contract for the official community plan to IBI Group Professional Services at the value of $286,325 plus applicable taxes with funding from the $21 million provincial fund and community works, and that the mayor and chief administrative officer be authorized to execute the required documents for the award of a contract for official community plan consultant with IBI Group Professional Services Canada once funding is approved. So can I have a seconder for that motion?
I think I seconded it.
Oh, thank you, sorry. And now we'll open it up for discussion or comments, questions.
I had a couple.
Thank you, Councillor McCann.
The first one that I was wondering about, or I wanted to at least make a comment about, was when I read through the document, the evaluation team didn't include anyone from Lytton. And I think that should be a requirement of any RFP that goes forward, that there should be at least one person there that actually lives in Lytton when these decisions are being made. Like I have complete faith in hired staff, but I still think we need that perspective and in the room when those things are being discussed. My second comment is that I noticed that we've become a very large scale enterprise here in Lytton. I asked how much Ashcroft paid for their recent official community plan, and they paid $80,000 for theirs. And I don't know if any of our bids even came near that, but anyhow, I guess we're famous now, and so we are a much bigger scope than we used to be. I think that it's important to keep things, and in particular, this process, grounded in Lytton's reality, that there are some very confident and capable people in the tender that we're considering. And I respect that. And I also respect that there are some very competent and important people in the village of Lytton as well that need to be very much a part of this. It's got to be their plan. My question to Mr. Lane is the delay in responding to this RFP likely to affect details like the cost, the time required, and the completion of the process? Because we've already delayed this somewhat from the original timeline, and I'm kind of wondering about how you project this. Like, for example, if we were to approve this tonight, or what would happen next to that time frame?
Thank you, Councillor McCann. If approved tonight, we would be finalizing the funding with the province. And once that's finalized, we'd be able to provide the actual contract with the chosen proponent, at which point that would start the 1 year or so process to work through the official community plan. And so I can't give an exact timeline around that funding side of things. It could be a month, 2 months, but I don't really want to say an actual timeline to that before the 1 year process starts for this. Okay.
And then the other thing is that, for example, when you wait a while, sometimes you lose, like people move on. And are we still secure in this RFP that this organization hasn't got a time limit on when they need to know that their project has been approved or accepted or whatever?
At this time, the proponents are aware that we're looking in around the end of November for decision. If it extends past this, I would need to communicate that with them and see if any will continue to hold their price and proposals. If not, there would be the risk of going back out to tender and starting the process over again in order to bring proponents back to the table.
Thank you. I wondered, that was what I was thinking. I have one last comment. At one point in the outline that you submitted to us, it talked about the project team. And once again, there is no mention there of a Lytton resident. So I would really strongly recommend that, even though it says that we would suggest these people might be involved on a project team, I would suggest that we always make sure that one of the people is always someone from Lytton, no matter what it is. And if you can tweak that, I'd feel a lot better about it.
to clarify on that, the project team would be including the Village of Lytton staff.
I know, but they don't live here. We need somebody who lives here on that, whether they're staff or council or whoever they are. We need someone that lives here to be on that project team. That was all my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Through the chair, just to give some clarification for staff and council. Right now, we are obviously in the stage of, there's a resolution on the table, there's recommendation forward, staff are providing their feedback and comments. These are all individual requests. And so if council agrees and wants to move forward with these suggestions, council needs to vote as a whole to make that an action item for staff. So if there is a requirement that council feels needs to be met, I do recommend that council vote on those things. But because we currently have a motion on the table, that's the thing that would be voted on right now. But if you need assistance when we move forward, I'm here as well. So just letting everyone know, you're welcome to provide suggestions and you're welcome to provide requests. But it's important that council knows that you as a collective, as a team, must vote for those things to happen for staff and contractors.
Thank you. CAO Baker, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just have a quick comment about the selection team and utilizing our consultants and village staff. When these proponents submit their proposals, they are submitted in confidentiality. We cannot use regular citizens within kind of the village of Lytton or any other community to just go and be a part of this review process. Okay. If we do bring kind of specific items about the proposals to council, they're actually brought in camera for that specific reason. So I'm not saying that there's not a way that we couldn't possibly do it. I would have to speak to our legal counsel. Maybe there's some waivers or documents that we could have individuals sign. But as it kind of stands right now, we wouldn't be able to just grab anybody off the street to participate in the review process of these proposals.
Thank you, CAO Baker. I hear what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure you hear what I'm saying too. Yes, I respectfully ask that consideration be given when these things happen within the rules of guidelines, of course. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lightfoot.
I'm going to speak against this motion. I cannot support it. At the last meeting, I said I didn't have enough information to justify the higher cost. Specifically, I was looking for previous work and clients that these groups had been involved with, and specifically because I did research it a bit, and IBI is a cloud-based platform asset management solution designed to serve the needs of building owners, corporate facility managers. As I read through their overview, it seemed quite apparent to me that they have a lot of experience in big communities, but I don't know that they have a lot of experience in small communities. In the request for proposals under 3.4, it says proposals shall be open for acceptance by the client for a period of 90 days following the submission date, which was August 10th. So I would suggest that we're already past that window. And so the prices that were suggested may not necessarily be extended past that date. And as far as review, in my past experience on various boards, the board, council, directors, or counselors had opportunity to review these kind of important steps. And under 6.7 in the request for proposals, it says ownership of submissions. All submissions submitted shall become the property of the client being the Village of Lytton. So perhaps it has to be in camera, but for these and several other reasons, I won't go on, I cannot support the motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot. Is there any other comments, questions? Councillor Toss?
Hi, thank you, Your Worship. I too am speaking against this motion this evening for several reasons. I read through the request for proposals as well and was disappointed that there wasn't a score or a weight given to knowledge of the community or understanding of the community or experience with the community. I think that should be a part of the RFP. Also, no Lyttonites on council. I know that the OCP is a minimum of a year, from what I'm told. And I don't feel that is going to be the holdup for buildings. So ostensibly, we're going to have buildings underway, hopefully, maybe even finished within a year. So it's not the OCP that's going to hold up our rebuild. It will be sewer, water, and potentially bylaw 711 that's preventing people from planning. And I think given the importance of the OCP, I think we as a council need more information. I personally am interested in exploring the option of doing it in-house, and I haven't quite received enough information thus far to see if that's feasible. So for those reasons, I'm going to be not in support of this. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle, do you have any comments or questions?
No, after reading through it, I'm in the same position as Councillor Toss and Lightfoot.
Okay. So hearing no other questions or comments, we will then call for the vote. All those in favor of accepting this recommended motion, please raise your hands. All those opposed? And carried.
Defeated.
No, not carried. Defeated. Thank you.
Through the mayor, Mayor O'Connor, I didn't see your hand up as opposed, so I'm assuming that was also
opposed.
Also opposed. Okay, thank you. Just for the minutes.
Thank you. So next we'll move on then to the Village of Lytton Community Wildfire Protection and Recovery Plan. That was presented at last council meeting on December the 9th.
November the
9th. Can I have someone make the motion, the recommended motion here?
I'll make the motion that council receive the Village of Lytton Community Wildfire Protection and Recovery Plan, Dave Mitchell and Associates, dated August 31st, 2022, for information.
Great. And a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor McCann, thank you. Any discussion or questions?
No.
And
If
yes,
I may, thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I'm just wondering, is this report, has it been posted to our website? And if not, can it be as a separate information item?
Yes, we can make sure that happens if it hasn't been. It has been? Okay, it is. It is on the website.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So all those in favor of this recommended motion? Okay, and carried. So on to temporary office and fire hall builder, design builder. We do have a report from staff on this, so
again, I'm going to, through your worship, I'm going to call upon Mr. Lane, project manager with Colliers, to speak to his report on this one.
Thank you, CAO Baker. The recommendation that we have from staff is to approve. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong document open here. Approve award of the contract for design builder for the property to the south of the Lytton Cemetery for use of a temporary village office and temporary fire hall. Recommending that MatCon Underground Utilities take on this contract at a value of $180,370.80 plus taxes, with funds to be allocated from the $21 million provincial grant. This property was identified as village-owned property that would be available to house a temporary office and temporary fire hall structure with some improvements and servicing. There was a full RFP process completed. Based on the process, the MatCon plus IBI were identified as the highest ranking proponent based on their experience, approach to the project, and their overall qualifications. If there be any questions on what had been provided for this report?
I have a question. If this contract was awarded, what is the timeline to have this completed?
My question too.
The design side would take a couple months, with construction following shortly after. So the property would be available in spring for use.
So it would start immediately?
Pending approval of the $21 million grant or $21 million fund from the province.
Okay. Councillor Lightfoot?
At our last meeting, we gave approval for some geotech work, and one of the sites was this site that we're talking about. And in the overview of that allocation of funds, it suggested that a report would be produced. And I'm thinking that this may be premature, that until we receive that geotech report, the stability of the site and the cost for making it a viable site is unknown. So I'm wondering, I mean, it's kind of off topic, but I'm wondering when we can expect that geotech report, because I think you can't really move ahead with design until that's been received and digested.
I'll have to verify if that scope of work was included in what was approved. I believe the approval was only part of the geotech's overall work scope, which was only focusing on the state of local emergency area, so the downtown core. The intent, though, was to have both works working concurrently. With the slope stability, the options would be there that we can leave the slope as is by cutting it back a little bit, or building retaining walls, depending on what the stability set states. But the overall plan was to have the geotech in around the same time as the designers. Their portion of the work would be very short.
Oh, okay.
Could you clarify for me, please, through the mayor? I don't have it in front of me, but I recall it was $105,000 or thereabouts for the cemetery adjacent, the site adjacent to the cemetery. And in the overview, it stated that a report would be produced. So until that report is produced, how do you know what is required?
We've had initial conversations with the geotech, and they had already been out site and walked the site previously in order to provide a scope of work of what would be required for that report.
So all they have to do is look at it and they know? It talked about boreholes, it talked about stability.
Yeah. So the amount of on-site work would only span a couple of days with a report following that. So it's a very small amount of work required for them to assess it on their initial walkthrough. That's how they came up with that, what that scope of work would be.
And that was worth $105,000?
I'll have to review that actual scope of work. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a bit concerned, should we go ahead with this and do the work to get the property ready? We supposedly had a building, but we don't have that anymore to come. We are talking retaining walls. I'm just thinking of the cost of a temporary village office, fire hall. I just see the dollar signs mounting up after the site is developed.
So I will say that after the site is developed and any temporary structures are removed, it would still provide a fully serviced piece of land for the village to use for what they will.
Okay. Councillor Lightfoot, did you have an additional comment?
I'm just wondering if there's any estimate of what the total cost will be for this development. I mean, it was 105 for the geotech. We're looking at, what is it tonight? 280. That doesn't have anything to do with the buildings, just the site. So I'm just feeling uncomfortable moving this ahead at this point. I hate to slow down progress, but I'm not sure. Sometimes if you go in the wrong direction, it's not progress. So do we have the motion on the floor? I'm sorry, I'm kind of.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'm going to speak against the motion.
Councillor Toss, do you have a comment, question?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions for Mr. Lane. So I'm under the, first of all, for the fully serviced lot being prepared for the Village of Lytton, I'm under the understanding that that is only for those uses, and the provincial funding is contingent on us building a temporary office and fire hall there. It's not that we could use the village lot for an alternative purpose. Is that correct? And I think maybe it was CFO Hawes that had said that.
The funding will be in place for us to proceed with that intent.
Okay,
yes,
that was my first question. The second question, and I'm also, I'm in favor of this in principle. However, I read through the RFP and I was looking at the other proponent that is not recommended in this recommendation, and it was Jim Dent Construction, which scored marginally lower than IBI/MacCon. 74 out of 90 versus I think 77 out of 90. And there's a difference of $54,000 for the work to be done. I did a little research into the other proponent, and the reasons for not picking him or the construction company, Jim Dent Construction, was because they lacked a consistent team and they didn't provide a robust enough proposal. I looked them up, did a little bit of research, and I found that the other proponent that's scored slightly lower and was 50 some odd thousand cheaper has been in existence since 1974 and has a plethora of major civil works projects behind them, successful. So aside from other reservations, looking at this other proponent would be something that I think is really important. And I have a question around how I heard that perhaps the Jim Dent Construction Company actually has a presence in Lytton already, which is up on the LFN lands and has worked with LFN. So that's a question and a comment. So has Jim Dent Construction worked with LFN, and do they have a presence in the village already?
My understanding is that Dent Construction had been working with the LFN, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will be speaking against this motion.
I have to apologize. Matt gave his staff report, and we got right into discussion on that report. We have not yet made the motion.
Okay.
That was my fault. I apologize. So maybe we will do that. Is there someone who would like to make the recommended motion?
I will make the motion that upon funding approval from the province, council approve the award of a contract for the design build of the temporary village office and temporary fire hall site to Matcon Underground Utilities Limited at the value of $180,370.80 plus applicable taxes, with the funds to be allocated from the $21 million provincial grant. And that the mayor and chief administrative officer be authorized to execute the required documents for the award of a contract for the design build of the temporary village office site with Matcon Underground Utilities Limited.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot. Now discussion. Are there any further comments or questions around this? Yeah, around this. Councillor McCann?
Is more of a comment than a question. I had the same question as you, Mayor O'Connor, about the timeline and wondering how long would this all take. My concern, I understand what people are saying, other councillors are saying about the cost and the willingness and different variables here that are of concern. My concern is the lack of a fire hall, even a temporary fire hall. And I am very, very concerned about that. And I don't know how we can be seen to be rectifying that. But I think it's really important that we are. So if this is not the appropriate way to do that, then I would say we need to be very quick on figuring out what is the way to do that, because a lot of things are held up on that fire hall. We can't have people come to our community. People can't build their homes without a fire hall being present in the community. And our guys are like, we're really lucky that they have a place right now that they can kind of hang out, and it's not really theirs, and they don't really have the equipment that is at their disposal. They're trying to retrain and they don't have the facilities to even do that. So that's my concern. Like the village office, I think we can find ways to do that. Both of those things are really important, that they become real in our community as soon as we can possibly make that happen. And I'm not convinced that this is necessarily the way, but I am convinced that it's very important that that happens soon. So just a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lightfoot?
You're muted, Councillor.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
I would like to say that I agree with Councillor McCann that we do need a fire hall. And I could envision that site being a place where the fire hall is established in a more permanent way. But if we're talking temporary buildings, that may delay having a more permanent fire hall there. And until the adjacent properties have been acquired, until we know what geotechnical costs need to be addressed, I think it's premature. I'd like to see this move ahead soon, but I'm not prepared to see it move ahead tonight. Thank you.
CAO Baker has a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's kind of just one point of clarification. Councillor Toss had mentioned about the review of the two proposals and the proponents, and why or how kind of a recommendation was being made. And when the two proponents and their proposals were commented upon in here, that more includes how they were evaluated, not how the recommendation came forward. Once the RFP is developed, the top ranked evaluation score is automatically the recommended proponent. And the reason for that is because within the evaluation score is where the financial scoring occurs. And so we would need some very, very strong rationale as to why we awarded a contract to somebody who wasn't the highest scored proponent based upon the criteria that we laid out when we put that RFP out.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Lightfoot?
Not to argue a point, but it's been my experience when various tenders have been submitted at the regional level that the highest score doesn't necessarily get awarded the contract. Sometimes the reviewers assess previous works and other factors. So while I appreciate the comments from our administrative officer, I'm not sure that I agree that it's always the case.
So
Thank
we
you.
have a motion on the floor. Are there any other comments about the motion? Okay, seeing no hands up for that. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this recommended motion regarding the temporary office and fire hall, please raise your hands.
Go for it.
All those opposed?
There you go.
Okay, and
You're muted,
forgot.
Nikki.
Mayor O'Connor, I just couldn't see your hand.
because I forgot to put it up for opposed, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Lightfoot, do you have a comment? Question?
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Just I have a difficulty of technology on my end. I'm not able to see the full scope of participants at this meeting, so I wasn't sure if that motion had been carried or defeated.
Sorry, and that's my fault. So I should have called that motion was defeated.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to Chief Financial Officer, CFO Hawes. Is that you? Yeah, that's you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the item before you, 2.1 is the SOFI, or which is an acronym for the Statement of Financial Information for the fiscal year 2021. With regret, this report is overdue and should have been filed some time ago with the province. And this report contains a number of items, including disclosure relative to remuneration for staff, as well as other key components, and also it includes a full set of the financial statements, debts of the municipality, severance agreements, which there were none, and the top listing of vendors for the municipality. So the report stands as stated, and the purpose of the motion tonight is to approve this report such that it can be submitted to the province for filing.
Okay, thank you. Can we have someone make a motion to make this recommended motion on Sophie?
I can
Councillor
do
Light,
that. Oh, you want to? Shall I?
sure, go for it.
Okay, I will move the recommendation that council approve the 2021 Statement of Financial Information, SOFI report as presented on November 23rd, 2022, regular council agenda.
Thank you.
Light-
A seconder?
Lightfoot, second.
Are there any questions about this report? Councillor Toss?
Yeah, just a quick question on clarification. I saw, I'm sorry, I don't have the page in front of me, but there was a note that there was, I think it was page 28 of the report had not been audited, and it was a COVID-19 Safe Restart grant for $275,921 that was unaccounted for. And I was just wondering if there was more information from CFO Haas on that and the background, perhaps. Thank you. I can find it if you'd like.
Through the mayor, I believe I've located the page 28. It's not uncommon for the set of audited financial statements to include schedules that are not part of the scope of the audit. And that's what this schedule is referring to when it says unaudited. The Village of Lytton received a COVID restart grant, as did all the municipalities in the province a couple of years ago. And I don't have in front of me, I apologize, the original amount. But the balance of the restart grant at the beginning of 2021 was, as stated, $275,921. And the village obtained authorization from the province to fully allocate that that balance of funding into the 2021 operational statement of the village, as we were projecting a significant deficit for 2021. And so it's, I forget the word that was used by Councillor Doss there, but it's not unallocated. I forget the word you used, I apologize, but there's nothing missing or anything like that. It's just showing that the beginning balance was fully allocated for 2021.
Thank you. I think the word was unaccounted for, but yeah, you've clarified that for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lightfoot, did you have a question or comment?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment that I'd like to thank our Chief Financial Officer for getting this together and getting that checked off the list of, I imagine, several reports or whatever that have been difficult to compile and make sense of. So this is great that we're able to submit it, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, moving on with staff report.
I had just one thing.
Sorry. Sorry, I haven't finished.
Sorry.
Councillor McCann, okay.
It was just a comment, and kudos, thank you as well to CFO Haas, and also to former Mayor Pulderman for not submitting any expense claims in the duration of the year. I appreciate that. That was a nice gesture on his part.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Good. Okay. So no more questions. So can we will call the vote then? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And carried. Okay. So moving on, staff reports. So number 3, I have corporate officer. And I'm not going to ask her to make a report tonight, but I would like to welcome Alba Banman, who I hope I'm saying your name right, Alba, who is joining us her first day on the job tonight, or today, I should say, for the Village of Lytton as corporate officer. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Mayor McCann. I appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Number 4 is economic development officer. We have nothing there. And nothing on the next 2. So we're going to move right down to correspondence. So we do have some correspondence for information. A letter from Huntley and Sharon Smith regarding thank yous to the previous council. Correspondence from ICBC regarding a request for donation. One from the Rotary Club of Burnaby pool rebuilding donation, and another Rotary Club of Merit rebuilding donation. So can we have a motion for can somebody make the motion for this recommended motion?
I'll make the motion that correspondence items 9 9/21 to 9/24 on the November 22nd, 2022 regular council agenda be received. And I would like to expand that motion or perhaps I should make it a second motion, that a letter of thanks be sent to the Rotary Club of Burnaby and Merit for their donation, either from mayor and council.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, a seconder for that long motion.
I would
Amended
sec-
motion.
I can
Is
make
it-
it into two if you
is it
prefer.
I can second, but I can also say that probably it should say November 23rd.
Thank you, Noni.
Right, thank you. Second is Noni McCann, or Councillor McCann.
Yeah.
And any other questions or comments?
No.
And seeing none, all those in favor?
Hi.
Carried. Okay, we'll move on now to reports from mayor and councillors. So we were just saying before the meeting started here that it was 2 weeks ago that we had our very first meeting. And I'm not complaining at all, but I've been very, very busy. So I've done things such as, spoken to Brad Biss's office about how the federal government is going to be supporting us. And I've received a letter as well from Minister Sajan looking to have a meeting in the next little while, setting up, talking about that as well. I joined a BC Mayor's Network Support Group, which I've been really pleased that they reached out to all the new mayors in the province. That's been great to be able to bounce ideas off of them. My email inbox has just been overflowing, so I've answered and responded to many, many emails. As well, of course, as a group here, we have had various meetings and that sort of thing with recovery team members. I had a meeting the other day. I joined a Zoom meeting with Minister Cullen to talk about the BC housing crisis and how the province is going to be addressing that. I've also had 3 media interviews. One was with CBC Sarah Penton the other day. Washington Post was here when we did an interview. And then there was a French documentary group from Paris, France that was here. And I did that. The last thing is I received an email from CP Rail regarding the holiday train. So they've confirmed that holiday train is coming on Saturday, December the 17th at 11:15 a.m. So we are working and making sure that that site is accessible for the entire community to attend. So that's my report. Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I too have been busy. On November 16th, we met as an unmet needs committee, not as a function of council, but I attended as I was a member prior to being elected. Very impressed, as I've said before, with the NGOs and support that the Village of Lytton still has from, and I won't go into all of the NGOs, but it was a wonderful meeting and it was empowering. We had orientation on Monday largely for bylaw 711 and from Collier's. I read through all of the RFPs and the OCPs and a lot of the literature, then the emails, as Denise has alluded to. There's been a lot of information coming towards us. I've heard concerns from many community members regarding bylaw 711, so I look forward to addressing those. Special thanks to Ernie Wagner and Judith Urquhart for their research on that and feedback on those bylaws. And I too did the interview with Washington Post. I can't remember the fellow's last name, Josh something or other, but busy couple weeks. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I want to first of all thank the staff for hosting our workshop in Lytton on Monday and by video conferencing as well. I continue to learn, and also last week, a week prior to that, I was invited to the senior class at KSS to put a lesson together regarding municipal government, and so CAO Baker, your slides came in very handy from the week before. It was a great time and I enjoyed myself. So I continue to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle.
Like everyone else, there's been lots of correspondence to keep up with. I attended the workshop on Monday as well. Other than that, there isn't much else for me to report this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lightfoot.
I too attended the unmet needs group on the 16th, I believe it was, and the composition of that group still has to be discussed, as many times that meeting was very productive, but time flies by. Also, the staff orientation on the 21st, and an interview with Josh from the Washington Post. I think it was the same day as the unmet needs. Aside from that, so it's pretty much the same as everyone, but aside from that, I want to give a shout out to one of our local artisans who's set up shop in Ashcroft, Denise Dunham / Hogan. She, in her creative mind, she put together a few little glass pieces and started a raffle, and I think it probably consumed a lot of her time, but it resulted in an amazing amount of money that she's directing towards the volunteer fire department. For some reason, it sticks in my mind that it's $5,555.55. I don't know
Yes,
how
it
she
was.
did it, but kudos to Denise, and we're hoping in the future to have you back home. That's about it for me, but it's these people that keep giving in so many ways that really keeps us going. It gives us strength to persevere. So thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So we'll just move right on to the calendar of events. So November 24th, which is tomorrow evening, we have the community town hall meeting at 5:30, I believe it is. So that will be the last one before the new year. And feels like it's been a while since we've had one, of course. December 14th is the next regular council meeting via Zoom. Christmas and Boxing Day, December 25th and 26th, are stat holidays. So the office is going to be closed on Tuesday, December 27th. This says, our agenda says Monday, but it's actually a Tuesday because, of course, Christmas and Boxing Day Christmas falls on a weekend.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Monday.
So Monday is Boxing Day. Tuesday will be the day. Yeah. Okay. So that brings us now to the closed portion of the agenda. So Nikki, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. So that concludes the public portion of the meeting for this evening. So to assist staff, please just use your Zoom window and just leave the meeting at the bottom right. Otherwise, staff have to manually remove everyone before we can proceed. So just give us a moment here. And this is a good time for council to have a 2-minute recess if they need to have a bathroom break or something like that. Everyone just can mute, and then I'll just reset the meeting here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that was temporarily. It smells smoky.